Welcome everybody to our webinar tonight. Our webinar is about our new Know Your Rights booklet on immigration, and we're lucky to have Anna Timu, who is our immigration campaign coordinator, and assisting her tonight, we're very honored to have Arrest Warrant from the Meyer Law Firm, and he's a former ACLUer, although he might not admit to that anymore. So I'm going to let them take it away, and I'm enabling the share for you, Anna, so that you can go ahead and share the new KYR book with everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Delina. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We are very excited to share this new Know Your Rights, Immigrant Rights booklet with folks. We started off this project about a year ago, and we wanted to make sure that we had a booklet that could pass something that I called the My Mom test, that knowing that my mom didn't get more than a third grade education, I needed her to have a tool for her to know her rights. And I could just hand it to her and know that she was gonna get the information that she needed. And so we have hosted this Know Your Rights training for several years here at the ACLU with the help of Arash. And so we wanted to make this a booklet that you could literally hand to someone and they could empower themselves to learn the information for themselves. And so we'll be going over that booklet tonight. And I am really, really excited to also have Arrest Warrant, who did used to work at the ACLU of Colorado. And now I would love for him to tell us a little bit about himself and what he's up to now.
Yes. Thanks, Anna. Thank you, Delina, both for the introduction. I am proud to be a former ACLU member, staff attorney. Thank you, Delina. Maybe not as proud of the former part as I miss Delina, Anna, and everyone else doing awesome work. I miss you all dearly, but very honored myself to be joining this presentation tonight. My title at the Meyer Law Office, which is primarily does immigration work and criminal defense, my title there is the Director of Policy and Civil Rights Litigation. So like my 2.5 years as a staff attorney at the ACLU, I am continuing to work very closely with the immigrant community, and I continue to do some Know Your Rights work and community advocacy in my current role as well. And the only other thing I'd say is I've been doing civil rights work for about a decade now, and a lot of that has been focused on immigrants' rights. And I'm excited to be working with Anna and Delina tonight to share this important information with all of you.
Thank you, Arash. So we'll go over the booklet, and as we're going through the booklet, if any questions come up, please feel free to add them in the questions section, and we will end tonight with a Q&A where Arash will be able to answer any questions that might arise from us going through this Know Your Rights booklet. So we'll jump right in. And the first and foremost thing that I want to make sure we all understand is that everyone has constitutional rights. It doesn't matter whether you have status or not, whether you're a citizen or not, you have constitutional rights if you are in the United States. And this is given to you under the 14th Amendment. You are guaranteed equal protections under the law and cannot be discriminated against on account of nationality, country of origin, appearance, language, gender, race, age, disability, or creed/religion. And some of the following rights are some rights that apply across the board in all of the scenarios that we're going to be going through. And I just want to make sure that you understand where these rights come from. So under the Fifth Amendment, you have the right to remain silent. You do not have to answer any questions from an ICE agent. And if you choose to do so, one of the best pieces of advice is to say so out loud. Say, I am going to remain silent. And under the Fourth Amendment, you have the right to know the charges that are being held against you and the reason for why you are being detained. You can always ask, have I done anything wrong? And the ICE agent or police officer is obligated to tell you what charges are being held against you. And with this, the most obvious and simple example that I could give is if a police officer stops you, they tell you, hey, I stopped you because you were going the 5-10 miles over the speed limit. That is their reason. And if they don't give you that reason, you have the right to ask what you did wrong and why you are being pulled over or detained. Under the Fourth Amendment, you also are protected from random and arbitrary stops and searches. And so you have the right to not be profiled, not be a person of color that just gets pulled over because you're a person of color. You have the right to not consent to a search of your property without an arrest warrant. And you have the right to privacy of your person, places, and things. And so not giving consent to any of these things is also not considered as probable cause. You have the right to be represented by a lawyer, but in immigration court, it is different because it is a civil matter. The court will not appoint you a lawyer or an attorney. You will have to hire a private lawyer for yourself. And if you do not have a lawyer, they should at least be able to guide you where you can hire a private attorney. You have the right to a translator. You can also request paperwork to be given in that language that you understand. And so if you don't understand what is being said to you or given to you on a sheet of paper, you have the right to say, hey, I don't understand this. I need this in X language for me to feel comfortable to answer anything or sign anything. And one of the biggest things that I've heard from folks is not knowing the difference between ICE and police. And so we want to make sure that we first know what the difference is between ICE and police. So ICE complies with federal immigration law at the national level. They have the power to enforce immigration law. They are funded by the federal government. ICE shouldn't be patrolling our community. When ICE is out in our community, they are out looking for a specific person who has a final deportation order. And they often don't wear uniform. They are often in plain clothing, and most of the time, the only way that you'll be able to recognize them is through a little badge on their belt saying that they are ICE. Whereas police, they comply with local laws, such as our speed limits. They are the ones that answer when we call 911. They do not have the power to enforce immigration laws. They are funded by state taxes. Police does patrol our communities. They can be found on our public streets, on our state highways, at our schools, at the courts, in probation offices, and they are in uniform while they are on duty, with some exceptions. And so we'll be jumping into the first scenario that we'll run through, and that is if ICE stops you in public. And you'll see that the recommendations for what to do in these scenarios, most of them are pretty similar, but I just want to make sure that we go through all of the recommendations in each scenario. So if ICE stops you in public, stay calm and do not run. Always remember that you have the right to remain silent, and you do not have to answer any questions. When we were forming this packet, we had spoken to several lawyers, and some lawyers at Remain, the Rocky Mountain Advocacy, Rocky Mountain Immigrant Advocacy Network, said that ICE is now just coming up to people asking for their name. And if they say, yeah, that's who I am, they just pick them up without asking any more questions. And so you have the right to not answer that question. And so if ICE comes up to you and says, hey, is your name Anatemu? You can say, you can ask, have I done anything wrong? Am I free to go? And always remember that you have the right to remain silent. And if you are going to remain silent, say so out loud. You have the right to speak to a lawyer. And if you are detained or taken into custody, you have the right to immediately contact your lawyer. Show any valid immigration documentation that you have with you, and do not sign anything before talking to a lawyer. And remember that ICE agents may wear normal clothing or present themselves as police. And when ICE stops you, they will call you by your name or ask you for your name.
Can I
And
interject
yeah.
with one thing, Anna? I think I would absolutely echo all the points that Anna's making, and that the Know Your Rights booklet gives you. The one thing I would say is, like, in addition to not running, also don't lie. If you, for whatever reason, decide to waive your right to remain silent, please don't lie, because that can get you in more trouble later in terms of lying to a federal agent. So the best advice is to exercise your right to remain silent, which you're going to hear over and over again, and I think for good reason.
Yeah, that is a really great point. And again, before answering any questions, you can ask, have I done anything wrong? Am I free to leave? And if they say yes, that you are free to leave, just tell them, have a nice day, and walk away slowly. And if they say no, then you can use your right to remain silent, or you can say, I want to speak to my lawyer, and then you can contact your lawyer immediately. And if they start to search you, say, I do not consent to a search, consider again your right to remain silent, and do not answer any questions about your immigration status or country of origin. And if it is safe to do so, you can record the incident on a mobile device, as long as you are not interfering with any of their actions. And to do this, we recommend a download of the ACLU of Colorado's Mobile Justice Colorado app. And if you need the QR codes for that, it will be further down in the booklet. And I will also give you all the information of where to access this booklet later on or after this webinar. And so if ICE pulls you over, if ICE or police signal you to stop your car, you should do so. Immigration officials and police can ask you for your name, your driver's license, registration, and insurance. And you should show these documents if you have them. And again, remember that ICE may be in normal clothing, or they might present themselves as police. And remember that they will ask you for your name or call you by your name. And so if ICE pulls you over, some of the recommendations, again, stay calm, do not run. Always remember your right to remain silent. You do not have to answer any questions. You can refuse consent to search your car. If an agent wants to search your car, you have the right to give or refuse permission, but you should not interfere with their actions. You have the right to speak to a lawyer. And again, if you are detained, you have the right to immediately contact your lawyer. Show any valid immigration documentation that you have with you. Show a valid driver's license, current insurance, and registration. And please do not sign anything before speaking to your lawyer.
So, Anna, just to add a couple things, don't ever sign anything. I think Anna's right. Before talking to your lawyer, that goes in general. And in terms of ICE pulling you over, we have seen this as an increasing practice. And if they start to get into your car, it just like you're saying, I'm maintaining my right to remain silent. You have to do the same thing if they start to do a search without showing you a warrant signed by a judge, which is something Anna will talk a little bit more later. But just say, I'm not consenting to this search. They are being very forceful, unfortunately, after they pull someone over, with getting someone out of the car without, like I said, showing an arrest warrant or a different kind of warrant. And so recording them during the course of their actions, and you know, you or a family member or someone recording as soon as you see someone who might be an ICE agent is a good idea in general, to kind of record the interaction, and in case you do want to be able to take legal action against them later, or even prove to an immigration judge that the initial encounter was not valid.
Yes. And that brings up the question of, are immigration officials allowed to pull you over? And the answer to this is, and I will ask for Arash's guidance on this, but one of the things that we do know is that the federal government does claim to have the power to conduct certain kinds of warrantless arrests within 100 miles of the US border. But we in Colorado, no matter where in Colorado you are, we are beyond those 100 miles. And so it makes it very difficult on answering whether or not immigration officials are allowed to pull you over.
Yeah, it's basically, yeah, we don't have a clear answer to this. Like I said, ICE is definitely doing it, though. It's definitely pulling people over. The 100-mile thing has to do with the jurisdiction at the border, and it's a big, obviously, number for what's within the border. And it has to do with the jurisdiction of Customs and Border Patrol, or CBP. And so I think the only place where they can make that argument that they can search people and just stop people is within Colorado, is at the airport. So if you're coming back and you're in customs, that might be the place where they try to search your stuff, and they say they get to do that. And unfortunately, I don't think there have been any successful efforts to fight that off in court. So that is more or less the rule right now. But in Colorado, like the booklet says, like Anna says, when you're pulled over, they need a warrant signed by a judge. Again, that is your rights. There's a difference between what your rights are and what the law says and how ICE acts. And so that is where what I was saying before about trying to, film them in the act can be helpful, and just make sure you're asserting your rights verbally.
Yes. And yes, CBP policy restricting suspicionless ID checks for domestic flights. CBP officers will ensure their words and actions communicate that passengers' cooperation is voluntary. CBP officers cannot block a passenger's ability to get off the plane. CBP officers will make clear that if asked, a passenger who chooses not to participate will not be punished. And CBP officers will ask airline personnel to communicate over the plane speaker that passenger cooperation is voluntary. And one thing before we do go further that I did really appreciate Arash saying is, we can go over these scenarios and what your rights are and what these key phrases or magic phrases are. And we can know these up and down. But when push comes to shove and ICE is right in front of you, we may know everything that is legal and what our rights are. And the only thing that we can control is how we act when ICE is in front of us. And we cannot control how ICE is going to react, how they're going to act. And so, yes, one of the best ways to protect yourself is to know your rights, but also try to record any interactions that you're having with ICE. And so, continuing on, if ICE comes to your place of work, knowing that they can enter a public space like a restaurant or a store, but they cannot enter the private areas of a workplace without the consent of your supervisor or an arrest warrant signed by a judge. And I think this is very important because that will be the first line of defense when it comes to your workplace. It'll either be the supervisor or the owner asking for a warrant signed by a judge, or not giving consent for them to enter into a private workplace area. And so some of the recommendations of if they do show up to your place of work is, again, stay calm, do not run. Ask the ICE agent if you are free to leave or return to work. If they say yes, inform the ICE agents that you will not speak with them and continue to work or go quietly. You have the right to remain silent and do not answer any questions. And this right to remain silent also comes with a physical act. And so we've seen that when ICE comes to places of work, they will say, everyone that has valid work authorization or is a citizen, please line up on this side of the room. Anyone that doesn't have any documentation, please go to this side of the room. And with your body, with action, you are confirming whether or not you have documentation or not. You have the right to stay in place and not answer that question with a physical movement. And if you have valid immigration documents, show them if an immigration agent requests them. Never lie about your immigration status or present false documents. One of the biggest things I know that in the Latin community and the undocumented community is that when we need to work, we find what they call chuecos or false documentations. Again, if you have those, please leave those at home. Do not carry those with you. If officials order you to form a row, again, according to your immigration status, you have the right to stay where you are and you are invoking your right to remain silent. If agents ask to look through your belongings, such as your cell phone or your work area, you have the right to say, I do not consent to a search. But again, do not resist if they try to look through your belongings without your consent. If it is safe to do so, you can record the incident on a mobile device. And remember, do not volunteer your name. Do not answer any questions about your country of origin or immigration status. And do not give any false information or documentation to ICE.
The country of origin thing is really important because in immigration court, the first thing the government has to do is give some proof of what they call alienage, that you are from outside the United States. So that statement at any point that you say you're from Mexico or El Salvador or wherever, that is that first thing they need from you. It may not be critical in your particular case, but that's just another point I wanted to reemphasize. That's very important.
Thank you, Arash. And if ICE comes to your door, do not open the door without knowing who is on the other side of that door. I know I had to have a serious discussion and a few years of training with my little brother because he used to think that anyone that was coming to the door was my aunt. And so he would just run up to the door, unlock it, open it, and run away and try to hide and scare her. And so we had to teach him not to do that, to look through the window to make sure that he knew who was on the other side of the door before he opened it. And that is the recommendation we have for everybody. Know who is on the other side of the door before you open it. And if it is ICE on the other side of the door, ask, do you have a warrant signed by a judge? And if they say yes, say, can you please pass it under the door or show it to me through the window? And if they say no, say that you will not be consenting to a search of your home. And so knowing the difference between an ICE warrant versus an arrest warrant, an ICE warrant, or what they call an administrative warrant, is not the same as an arrest warrant signed by a judge. If ICE presents you with an ICE warrant, which is not signed by a judge, and we will go through some examples of what that looks like, you can say, I do not consent to a search, and you do not have to open the door or let them in if they don't have the arrest warrant signed by a judge. And the ICE warrant is signed by an ICE agent, not by a judge. It says authorized immigration officer below the signature line. It does not give the right to search under the Fourth Amendment or arrest. If it is a valid warrant signed by a judge, it'll say U.S. judge under the signature line. And it does give legal permission to authorities to arrest someone in your home. And if it is a valid warrant signed by a judge, check that the person they are looking for is on the warrant. Make sure that that person is on the warrant. If the warrant is valid, the person's name in the warrant the person on the warrant should leave the house, go outside of the house and speak with ICE agents. It's better for them to go outside and speak with them individually than give them permission to enter the home and give them permission to ask questions of everyone else in the home and put them at risk of also getting picked up or deported. And so if you do witness a raid, whether you are the person whose home is being knocked on or whose workplace is being raided, in Colorado, we have the Colorado Rapid Response Network that we've spent years cultivating and training different activists and lawyers to be dispatchers and observers. And so if you call this hotline, we can send someone to verify that it is ICE, that it is immigration, whether outside of your house, at your workplace, in public. And if you do this, we also have, and this is statewide, so you can call from Grand Junction, from Denver, from Fort Collins, and from Pueblo, and we will still have people in those areas to be dispatched. And we also have immigration lawyers that are ready to be dispatched to help any situations that arise with ICE being in the community. And so going back to the example of a valid arrest warrant signed by a judge, if you notice here at the bottom, it says U.S. Magistrate Judge, and it makes it very clear that this is an arrest warrant. And then if you go to what is a non-valid warrant signed by an ICE official, you will see that the signature line says that it is an immigration officer that is not equal to that of a judge. And so if ICE does enter your home and they do not have a valid warrant, remember that you have the right to remain silent. Make sure that family members, especially children, know that they must keep quiet. Say, I do not consent to a search. Even if ICE ignores you and enters without permission, saying, I do not consent to a search is essential. And this might help you in court later on, saying, I told that police officer not just once, not just twice, I told them 15 times that I did not consent to a search when they didn't have a valid arrest warrant signed by a judge. And if it is safe to do so, again, you can record the incident on a mobile device. And if they do have a valid arrest warrant, say, I'm going to use my right to remain silent. I want to speak to my lawyer. And again, whoever is on that warrant, to have them step out of the house and go speak to ICE outside of the home. And some things that allies can do during an ICE raid, whether it be in public, someone being pulled over, at a house, at a workplace, if you can safely do so, take photos of documentation and video record raids and arrests. Obtain the names and phone numbers of any witnesses. Share information about the raids with your coworkers. If there is a union at the workplace, contact your union official. If ICE agents or police officers enter without a proper warrant, ask for their names and or write down their badge numbers. And then to report a raid, contact the Colorado Rapid Response Network, whose number we've provided there. And what to do if ICE detains you. Again, first and foremost, do not sign anything. We know that ICE officials really push the voluntary deportation, and they will say, if you sign this, we're going to make this so much more easy for you. If you sign this, it's just going to be so fast. We'll be able to return you home in no time. And when they say we're going to return you home, they're going to return you home, but to your home country. And so that is one of the biggest things that we recommend is please do not sign anything if you are detained. And even if you are detained, you do not have to answer any questions. You have the right to refuse to sign and say, I want to speak to my lawyer before signing anything. Again, you have the right to a lawyer, but you will not be appointed a lawyer. You will have to find one and pay for a lawyer. You have the right to make a phone call. And this one's really important. You can call a family member, a lawyer, and most importantly, if you do not have any phone numbers memorized or you do not have an immigration lawyer, you can ask to speak to your country's consulate. We work very closely with the Mexican consulate, and I know that they get calls of people saying, I don't know any of my family members' phone numbers, but this is where I live. And they will send someone to say, hey, your loved one got picked up by immigration. They are currently in detention. And you can also ask for a bond hearing. And this is very important. At the bond hearing, an immigration judge decides whether or not to give you a bond or to lower the amount of a current bond. And you may not be eligible for a bond if you already have a prior deportation. Or if you have certain criminal convictions. But if you've never had a deportation before, you are eligible for a bond. And once you are inside of the detention center, there is a hotline for detained individuals that they do make available for folks once you are inside. And so finding a detained person in Colorado, for the first 24 hours, the person will not show up in the system. And so once they've been detained for more than the 24 hours, you will need the person's full name, their date of birth, and country of origin. And we do provide you with the direct website for that, because it is kind of hard to find if you're just going through the ICE.gov website. And so we do want to make sure you know all of your rights and all of the scenarios that could happen and that have happened traditionally in Colorado. But what can you do proactively to prepare your family or to prevent anything like this from happening? First and foremost, find yourself an immigration lawyer. And if you need recommendations, we have a really good one with us online tonight. And so have a legal consultation with a lawyer. Why? This is very helpful to be aware of your rights. They can tell you what you can do to avoid ICE and the immigration process as a whole. But they can also tell you about your options. If you have a green card, find out if you can become a US citizen. If you are here on a visa, you can find out if you can get a green card. If you don't have immigration status, you can find out if you may be eligible for getting a visa or a work permit. If you have a criminal arrest or conviction, find out how it might affect your case or if there's any way to erase it from your record. We do have legal help directories that we do recommend in the packet. Next thing would be plan with your family. Talk with your family about the reality of living in the US undocumented, and talk about the possibility of ICE detaining one of your loved ones and what you would do. And ensure that children know, again, to not open the door for anybody, or if they don't know who's on the other side of the door, but also let them know that if ICE does show up, that they have to remain quiet during a raid. And choose a family member to care for your children and have this conversation with your family. I remember back in 2006 when there was a raid of the meatpacking plant in Greeley, there were kids waiting for their parents for hours at school. And it became late afternoon, the sun started falling, and no one was coming to pick them up. And they ended up getting taken by the state. One of the most important things is having a family member that has legal status as your emergency contact at school. That way, if you are pulled over, or if your workplace has a raid, or if they stop you in public, or if they come to your house during the day, you know that someone is going to be able to pick up your kids from school at the end of the day. And then that way you know who is taking care of your kids, where they will be sleeping, and where they will be eating. And so make sure that you have that conversation with the family member that you trust, and make sure that both you and your child are familiar with that person and have that person's phone number memorized. And also, talking about memorizing phone numbers, please memorize some important phone numbers. I know that we're all very modern now with our cell phones and our laptops and our iPads and everything. We've lost the art of memorizing phone numbers. I really only have like the most important phone numbers memorized, but I remember when I was in middle school, I had all of my girlfriends' phone numbers memorized. And so please, you do not need to have your whole entire phone book memorized, but please have some of those very important phone numbers, like your immigration lawyer, your family members' phone numbers memorized. Build a network. We're recommending that you build a network, because if you have community around you, if you have people that can attest to your good moral character, we'll be able to fight against your deportation in a much better way than if we don't know you. If we don't know that you got picked up by immigration, how will we know to fight for your case? How will we know that you need help fighting for your case? And so please build a network, whether it be at your school, whether it be in community, but please have a support system and have people that know your situation. And then figure out which documents you should and shouldn't carry with you. Again, do not carry any false identifying or any false documents or any false immigration documents. And we're also recommending that you do not carry any documentation from your country of origin. And when we give this training, and we say this at the Mexican consulate or at any other consulate where people are getting their passports, they say, well, I'm getting my passport and now I'm being told that I probably shouldn't carry it around with me. And we recommend that you get your passports, or you get your voting cards or identification cards from your consulate. Those are great to have, but leave them at home, because then it will open up the conversation of, well, why can't you get a US passport? Why can't you get a Colorado driver's license? And so we just don't want that conversation to even start. And so it's recommended that you just keep that documentation at home, unless it is the only piece of documentation that you have. And again, create a box. I know that with my mom a few years ago, when we were going through the process of buying a house, I asked her, oh, we're going to need all of these tax documents. Where do you have them? And she had, oh, this year I have them in my closet in my underwear drawer. And then this other previous year, I have them in the hallway closet under this box. And it was just kind of like, how would you know where to find all of these documentations in case of an emergency? And we created a box that had old driver's licenses, passports, our birth certificates, my mom's marriage license, tax forms, any sort of rental agreements, utility bills. And when we were confronted with the 2013 floods, that box became so useful because we just grabbed one thing and started running. And so whether it be a natural disaster or whether it be that you got picked up by ICE, it is better to have one central location to have all of your important documentation in one place where you can pick it up or you can tell someone where to find it. And so we are also providing in this booklet a lot of legal resources. And so the first part is organizations that can help with completing forms, filings with USCIS. And then the second group of organizations that we're sharing are organizations that can help with legal representation. And then we have also, since we do work with a lot of lawyers across the state, we have put together a list of trusted lawyers, whether it be in the Western Slope, in the mountains, in the Denver area. And you will see that our very first one in the Denver area is our very own Meyer Law Firm. Again, in the north, whether it be Fort Collins or Greeley, and then again in the south. And we have also provided in this booklet all of the consulates here in Colorado that you can access, that you can talk to, and get any sort of documentation from your home country. And community resources, community organizations, I apologize. We do go through trusted community organizations that provide services to immigrants, whether it be advocacy-based, direct service providing, or trainings, or helping you just in life. We have provided all of those community organizations that are available to immigrants and undocumented folks. And starting with us, the American Civil Liberties Union of Colorado, we have also included a QR code to our mobile justice app, which is very, very helpful when push comes to shove. You just pull out the app, it starts recording, and when you first download the app, you are asked a series of questions, providing your information. And so when you are encountered with the situation, that information is already there. All you have to do is press record, and you do not have to worry about that video getting deleted or not getting to where it needs to be, because that video automatically gets uploaded to the cloud and gets sent automatically to the ACLU of Colorado. So if something does happen where you can't follow up or you can't call someone, we will have that video and we will know that something happened to you. And again, we have a lot more organizations like the American Friends Service Committee, Asian Victim Advocacy, Casa de Paz, Colorado African Organization, the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition, Colorado People's Alliance, Mi Familia Vota, Protégete, and Servicios de la Raza. And in this booklet, we wanted to make sure that folks didn't just know the basic survival tools for here in the state, but we wanted to make sure that people had the opportunity to thrive, to get any sort of help or assistance that they need. And so we did provide a lot of additional resources for folks, starting with how to apply for a driver's license through the SB 251 program. And we take you through step by step what you need to do in order to get this driver's license for yourself. And I know that these driver's license appointments are pretty hard to come by or to get one. And so if you are in, you just can't navigate the website at the time that you need to navigate the website, we have provided a list of approved organizations that will make this appointment for you free of cost. We worked very hard to make sure that we were able to pass this bill back in 2013 and get driver's licenses for folks. And the last thing that we would want is for folks to get charged to get an appointment. And you shouldn't be charged to get an appointment. And so these are approved nonprofit organizations that will make your appointment for you for free. And they're all over the state. We also wanted to list some healthcare providers and mental health care providers in the state that are for people that are undocumented, uninsured, and they will provide this service either at free or very, very low cost. And they are, again, all over the state, several different service providers in this booklet. And we also want to make sure that folks, again, have the opportunity to continue their education. And so we provided information on access to higher education, as well as scholarship resources that undocumented people can apply for. And we included the local Colorado ones. There are more at a national level, but these are the ones that you can apply for within the state. And one important piece of resource that just came out from the American Friends Service Committee is a resource called Crossing South. So when you are in deportation proceedings and you know you're going to be deported, or you are deciding to self-deport, or you know that you won't get a stay of removal approved one last time, and you need to start preparing for what the journey going back south looks like, this resource called Crossing South provides you just that, of returning to Mexico, Honduras, El Salvador, or Guatemala. It provides you with all of the resources that you'll need on making this process simple and as safe as possible. Fighting against fraud. We know that undocumented folks are some of the most vulnerable people out there, that whether it be notaries or immigration lawyers saying, just give me $10,000 and I will make you a citizen in 2 years. We know that so many people are easy prey for someone that promises them the American dream at such a low cost in such a low time. And so one of the biggest things is that we want to fight against this fraud and this predatory practice against our undocumented communities. And so we are also providing, whether it's wage theft, we are giving you the number to call directly, whether it's different charity, creditor, mortgage frauds, different frauds that are happening. We have also provided you with the information of how to safely report those. And finally, the last piece of resource, we want to make sure that you have the access to bank. We know that having a debit card or a place to put your money is something that is hard to come by here if you're undocumented. And so we are giving you what to expect when you go to a bank, local credit unions that accept banking with undocumented folks, and even larger banks that bank with undocumented folks. And we also have a contact keeper at the end of this Know Your Rights booklet. And so with that, I do want to make sure that we leave some time for some Q&A. And so Arash, thank you so much for staying on.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Anna, I want to, and Delana, look at Delena's background. That is
Isn't that cool?
wonderful.
Yes.
Man, ACLU is so fancy. This is what I miss.
The comms department.
Yeah, we've just got
Shout
my
out to them.
patio doors behind me. One thing I want to add about, you went through all these scenarios about where ICE might try to grab someone. One thing we haven't talked about that's very, very new is that there is now a state law saying that folks cannot be arrested at or around courts, and that's everything but federal court, basically. State courts, local courts, municipal courts, and on your way to and from court. So this is a brand new law. I'll be very honest. I don't know, just like with a lot of the other things we've told you, if ICE will respect it. We're waiting to see what'll happen, but they will be violating Colorado state law if they try to arrest you around a courthouse or when you are on or way to from court. And I should add one more category to that. that's a probation appointment if you're on your way to or from a probation appointment as well. Yeah, it's, a lot of times jails are inside courthouses, and ICE likes to grab people coming out of jail, and so that's also going to be covered by the law since it's near a courthouse. So one other thing for you all to be aware of.
That is great information, as is all the information that we received tonight. This book will be up on all our welcome website soon, if not already. And we'll be getting some very nice hard copies of it too for law firms and schools and other folks to grab. We do have 2 questions tonight, and I will go ahead and read them. Have you seen ICE use both search warrants and arrest warrants? How can we tell the difference, and what are individual rights under each?
I will say that in my experience, and Anna can speak to what, ACLU and community partners have said, is that you can't, ICE often will not have a warrant. ICE will often come up, and I'm, in recent days in recent months, I should say, when I've seen instances of ICE grabbing people, folks will say, do you have a warrant? Let me see your warrant. And they'll say stuff like, I've got one, don't worry about it. And they will not often show it to you. So have they used both search warrants and arrest warrants? Yes, they have in the past. You're not likely to see one. One thing that, the rest of the question is, how can we tell the difference, and what are the individual's rights under each? So the difference is the arrest warrant will identify a particular individual. And so if they're looking for that particular individual, that's the person they have the right to arrest. The search warrant has to identify with specificity the area that they're looking for. So when you are asking ICE to slide that warrant under the door, and if by some reason they do give you a warrant signed by a judge, what does it actually say, what areas they can search? Is it the entire home? Is it the entire office? Is it some area of the workplace? So that is, I think, the best answer I can give on search warrants and arrest warrants. Anna, do you want to add anything there?
No, I mean, just echoing they will likely not show you the arrest warrant is the biggest thing.
And if ICE shows up at a workplace with a valid arrest warrant for an employee on site, what is the best way for the supervisor who comes to the door to handle the situation and best protect the rest of their employees?
Yeah, I think that's another great question. And so assuming it's a valid arrest warrant signed by a judge for an employee, I think the best way to protect everyone else, and this gets at a really important point, because one of ICE's favorite tactics is to, if they are looking for someone, if they do have an arrest warrant, is to go ahead and grab whoever they can. So start asking questions about whoever else is around. Where are you from? Do you have documentation? And hope that they get some kind of information out of them. And they'll say, they'll say, oh, well, then we're taking you in too. So to avoid that situation, I would go get the person and just bring them to ICE and get everyone else kind of away and out of the way, and make sure they know their rights. They know they have the right to remain silent. They shouldn't be answering questions. So, I mean, that is the work you can do ahead of time. Do these kinds of trainings for your own employees, or ask an organization, or our law office sometimes will come and do trainings for workplaces. But if you're handling this yourself in the situation, that is my best advice. Just bring that and go ahead. All right, fine. This employee is present. It's a valid arrest warrant. Bring them to the door. That way you eliminate that possibility of ICE finding and grabbing someone else and arresting someone else.
And surprisingly, those are the only 2 questions. And thank you, Nicole, for submitting those questions. So I'm going to give people a minute. If they have other questions, you can submit them in the Q&A box. For me, that's the bottom of the screen, but these interfaces are different for everybody. There's also a chat box. You can put them there. I'll see them no matter what. Is there anything else that anyone wants to add while we're kind of giving folks a moment to type in other questions if they have them?
Oh, I think we just got one. Delaney.
Oh, we got one. Do you have these materials in Spanish that we can provide to our clients? And that's from Christy. And we, I'm gonna let Anna answer that.
We have the content, and all of it is in a very long Word doc. And as we have in the English version, a very beautiful let's see, what is the word I'm looking for? It's not intimidating, a non-intimidating booklet. And so we are giving our comms folks the opportunity to make this booklet in the Spanish booklet, and that should be available soon. But in the meantime, if you do want to access the English booklet, it is up on our allourwelcomeco.org website. I have provided the link to it directly. And for folks listening on the phone, it is allourwelcomeco.org/no-your-rights-booklet. And it'll take you directly to this booklet where you can go through everything that we went through tonight.
And as Anna mentioned, we are working very hard to get this up in Spanish. She also has a webinar that you'll be able to find on our website very soon as I just put the link in to the Know Your Rights training we did last week, which deals with some of the resources you can get right now during this COVID-19 pandemic time. You know, there are lots of resources for our immigrant friends.
And Delana, if I can do a quick plug,
You can.
if that's allowed. Taking ACLU time is allowed.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Speaking of what's going on right now, there are a lot of different questions that the immigrants and the immigrant community have right now, and my law office has tried to produce some materials. You can check our Facebook page for that. Who's eligible for unemployment? The short answer is if you have work authorization, you can get unemployment. And we're going to be doing some more coming up soon here with, you know, who's eligible for the stimulus package and what can folks get out of that. So I'll stop there, but there is some timely information, I hope, on our page, on our Facebook page as well.
That's wonderful. We did have some questions last week, and yeah, that's why we decided to have you on this week. You're a week late.
Sorry, I wasn't here.
So it doesn't look like we have any more questions. So I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. This will be up on the internet, and I know that Anna will be doing a Spanish language version of this very soon. She's shaking her head, yes. And so that will be probably a Facebook Live, and we'll get that up on our website also. So I want to thank Arash and Anna for being with us tonight, and for Anna for all the amazing work that she's done on this book. Ooh, I have a chat coming through. Oh, no, thank you from Cassidy. And thank you, Cassidy, for being with us. So this book was a collaboration. I know Arash worked on it when he worked with us. Many of our other lawyers, our communications department. It is a collaboration across the entire ACLU and many other partners. So I want to thank everybody for their work on it and thank everybody for their time tonight. You can join us on Thursday nights, same time, 6:30 p.m. for COVID-19 and movement restrictions, another Know Your Rights presentation. Jessica Howard, our community education manager, and she'll have a special guest star also, but you'll have to tune in to find out who that is. So we hope to see you on Thursday. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Anna and Delana, thank you for everything you do and everything your organization does.
Thank you, Arash.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being on, Arash.
Absolutely. Hope everyone has a good night.
Thanks.